I want to move my old PC into a new PC case for two reasons. Number one, aesthetics, obviously the most important one. And number two, for better airflow, which is still kind of important, especially when your fans are going crazy and your CPU is at 80 degrees when you're doing absolutely nothing on your computer. I'm going to be walking you through the entire process from start to finish, and hopefully this is helpful to you if you're looking to make a similar upgrade of your own. Even though I'm not the best computer expert there is out there, hopefully you can see through my mishaps that it's not so hard after all. So this is my pre-built PC. I got it about a year ago, and to be honest, it's not the most aesthetic thing, and my goal right now is to make my entire setup as aesthetic as possible. Also, I've learned that the airflow is pretty shitty, and I'm not the only one who's been having heating issues in this build according to the Amazon reviews, so let's see if upgrading the case will help. Even if it doesn't help, at least I'll finally have a gorgeous case to stare at, I guess. So the first step is to remove the GPU. We'll want to start by unplugging this 8-pin cable at the front. But there should be a couple of screws holding the GPU in place. Mine were on the side and in the back. Some of the screws in the back were hard to reach, and I had to tap into my hardware store again to get a smaller screwdriver so that I could actually access those screws in the back. And then after those were out, it's simply pushing a lever and the GPU was out. Next, let's move on to unplugging all of the other cables on our motherboard. If you look at your motherboard, there are probably a bajillion cables plugged into it, and they all need to come out in order to take out the motherboard. I took detailed pictures of which cables went where, just in case I needed to reference them later. I didn't know at this time, but there are a bunch of cables that are actually connected to the front panel, like the cables for the power button, the USB port, and the front LEDs. And I never ended up needing to plug those back in because the new case came with its own bundle of front panel cables. While I was doing that, I also took off the back fan in case I wanted to use it in my new case. Spoiler alert, this fan is pretty shitty and I would discard it for a better fan. My pre-built also came with a Wi-Fi antenna that I did not learn about in any of the YouTube tutorials that I watched. So I used my phone a friend skill to confirm that I wasn't breaking anything by literally ripping this off. And it was finally time to move on to removing the motherboard and power supply. As you can see, this was taking me way longer than I expected by my outfit change. But essentially, for the motherboard, I unscrewed all 8 screws, and with some help, was able to extract it from the case. The power supply, after that, is pretty straightforward to take out, and our removal process is completed. Here's my computer reduced to just its components, and now we're ready to put everything into our new case. This was the step I have been waiting for. This is the Corsair 4000X, and I've been eyeing this case for a long time. So obviously the motherboard and power supply have to go in first. Don't be like me and try to screw on your motherboard without making sure that all the motherboard standoff screws are in the right place. I had to unscrew all my screws and redo this step because I did not have the correct motherboard standoff screws. Once that was done, I reconnected all the cables between the power supply and motherboard and began working on connecting the bundle of front panel cables that came with the case itself. I ran into some troubles here as well since my PC was a pre-built and the motherboard probably wasn't meant to be sold individually, so there was no documentation out there on what the ports were supposed to be. So I had no idea which pins were meant for the power cables and restart cables. I eventually found this video and made an educated guess about my motherboard, and it worked out. Lastly, I reinstalled the GPU and reconnected the cables there, and we're all done. Moment of truth. Oh, the power button. Right. Moment of truth again. It works! It works! It works! Oh my gosh. 2 whole days and it lights up. I'm so happy right now. I'm so happy right now. I was putting off making this move for the longest time because I was kind of intimidated by the mess of wires and electronics inside my computer, but to be honest, it was a lot more straightforward than I had imagined, and I learned so much about computers in this process. If you're wondering if the case swap solved my cooling issues, unfortunately, no. But after another month of troubleshooting and procrastination, I finally switched out my cooler and added some more powerful fans. Yes, they had to be RGB. And the result was, dare I say, pretty cool. I also swapped out this fan for the white RGB one to better match my aesthetic, and here's the final look.